This isolation is built on the same layer, the same depth, and it's after the stone was machined.
I'd say it's after it's been machined.
Yeah.
Then it's the weathering just.
And a lot of pressure can also
Yeah,
do
to
that.
see that. I mean,
Pop it off.
if it feels a little stronger, you could probably pull it off just.
Yeah,
with your
yeah, I
fingers.
know.
So
That's
no,
how many
that's
of the
after.
items loses that surface. But you can also find it in a carving. Can this be happening by weathering? Yeah.
Over what kind of period of time?
Oh, thousands and thousands of years.
Thousands and thousands of years.
There you go. So here clearly we can see the difference of different types of quarrying, different types of tool marks. The inscriptions on the top are 19th dynasty. It's Ramses II. This is a metal chisel mark. So this comes from that time period. However, Chris Dunn, Hakim was the first to point this out, and Chris Dunn agreed. Look at these score marks. Look at these score marks. All over score marks. Diamond tools. This was, when they originally cut the stone, this here is the quarried stone, these were blocks they were going to use, and then they use, as Chris says, a facing tool to even it out with diamond tips, and this is the marks. Hakim pointed this out clearly as diamond tool marks. And geologists, we'll have our geologists come, they've agreed.
So this is the actual quarry where the second pyramid, that one, some of its blocks came from here. The question is, how were those blocks removed from this solid wall? What kind of technology was involved? A bunch of slaves hacking away. Are those hand tool marks or machine marks? And what about this thing?
The Egyptians used hammers. Exactly. They are calling gods, so they call the knitter gods. And then in the Middle Ages and the beginning of the 18th, 19th century, the early British and French, they put their own background also, because their technology was very simple at the time, so they couldn't imagine that there is other technology can do this. So they stuck with the primitive tools. But nowadays we may have better chance that we have higher technology, but because of that technology we feel how difficult to do this with our technology nowadays. That's why I say if we Egyptologists will try to explain it again, to refix this, I think they're going to come out with better stories.
21st century. This is what's known as a granite ashlar. It's broken, obviously broken off. This is one of the things Chris Dunn immediately came to. He had another one that's sort of, it was like a couch that he put in his first book, and I thought he meant this one. So we're on the plateau one day and we're walking, and I said, I'm going to your finished stone. He said, no, you're not. You're going the wrong way. And I came to this, oh, this one is better than the one he had. It's a perfect radius, all the way down, all the way. He's measured this completely, never deviates. But what's interesting to understand about this is just a piece. What you have here is a granite wall. I mean, a limestone wall. This is a limestone bedrock. Look at these stones, some 200 tons at least. Look at the erosion. This is very, very old. This is where Robert Schoch came, and he said this erosion could be 100,000 years old. This is very, very old. So what we had, this is very ancient, and it got so eroded, then they cut granite. And they placed the granite over it, because we know that this had covered this. And these are just pieces. So this was, and this is upside down. We have one in the front there that's right side up, that has perfect flat top. So this whole wall was covered with this granite.
And also the interior is granite.
Yes.
The core is limestone, the
Yes.
exterior is granite.
Yes.
So you have two materials.
Exactly.
Again, it's not like these were like simply put on. They had to interlock.
Right.
The same as the pyramids. And the amount of effort that would take to custom fit. This is in the Valley Temple. You're looking at pink S1 granite.
One piece of granite.
This is the beginning of this stone.
It was a door stopper.
Goes around the corner.
And if you look up there, you see the circle? You see the circle? Perfectly circled.
And the Egyptian door, Anthony, used to be locked up, not to the
All the
side.
way.
Exactly.
The look was going up.
Right.
Around the corner.
That's where the hole is. You see the circular hole up there, Brian?
And this is the joinery, just like we see in the Coricancha in Peru. You're talking technically a perfect fit. Look at that. So again, behind the head of the Sphinx are a series of these incredible shafts, more than 10 feet across, 10 feet wide, and at present at least 60 feet deep, but filled with sand. So originally they would have been much, much deeper, and they would have carried water. The vertical shafts connecting with horizontal tunnels that carried water. According to Yusuf, this is of course, the causeway that goes to the second pyramid, and the water traveled through these horizontal systems of tunnels, carrying the water to the Great Pyramid and the others to generate electricity. The pyramids split water into hydrogen and oxygen. And so that's why there are the chambers inside the pyramids. They weren't burial places. They were places where electrical generation happened. In the base, the water came, was split, and traveled up through the galleries and shafts up. And for more information, check out Chris Dunn's Gíze power plant. This is the causeway leading from the Sphinx Temple, Valley Temple, up to the second pyramid here. And this causeway is megalithic limestone. Massive blocks of, in general, tonnage. And as Yusuf has told me, it was probably originally had an outer layer of either limestone or maybe even granite, because you wouldn't tend to want to make a surface like this that is going to be used for people or animals or whatever to move on out of limestone. Limestone's quite soft. Granite's super hard. And again, the causeway, and what most people don't know, is that under the surface of the causeway are a series of chambers, and these are tunnels that lead down, possibly, to the great tunnel that travels from beyond the Sphinx up and into the lower parts of the second pyramid, so-called Khafre's pyramid. So the series of shafts, tunnels, here in between the Sphinx and the second pyramid is incredibly massive, far more massive than most people know. And they weren't all made for the burial of people. It's more likely that a lot of the tombs here in this area were actually inherited by the later cultures. Sorry?
That they were reused as tombs.
Right.
What I believe is that these shafts and tunnels and chambers, that 3 levels, let's take the Osirian shaft for example, is part of the original construction of the pyramid. But then later it was divided. This was for something, this was understood for something else. And the priest used some of these chambers to be tombs. That's the transformation. They were not originally built to be tombs, but they were used later to be tombs, and then archaeologists would come and find it as a tomb. Then he would thought that the original purpose of it was that it was made to be a tomb. This is the mistake.
Right. So the problem, as Yusuf has just said, is that if you presuppose that the dynastic Egyptians were the first ones here doing any kind of major work, then you would confuse this work with that. That is, in a lot of cases, like huge multi-ton blocks. This is reconstruction, but the work of the dynastic period, as Yusuf has pointed out, are blocks which one person could pick up, one person could shape. But that's, not to say nothing, but that is very simplistic work as compared to the construction of the 2.3 million blocks that make up the Great Pyramid, almost the same number making up the second pyramid, and a lot making up the third pyramid. So prior to the dynastic Egyptians were the Cometians, and the Cometians were the great builders, evidenced here by being able to hew into the solid living limestone.
You can see here how this resonance chamber works. This is the well where the sound of the water was coming from, and here would be front of it the false door. So the false door used to interact in that chamber with the sound. Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
Yes, it's still resonating, but not in any other part of the chamber. Not here. Doesn't.
No.
But here, if the sound, if the running water from underneath created sound, the sound was going to come up from here and interact or be regulated to the resonance level through what we know as the false door. And that's what possibly generated the resonance, which was also needed, sound.
So again, here is the middle pyramid, and we're in an area that has these incredible shafts. These have nothing to do with digging burials for people. Look at the size of that. That has to be 15 feet across, more than 15 feet from front to back, and this channel in it. And it's not isolated. There are numerous vertical shafts here and throughout this whole area. And from what Yusuf has told me, you can find these shafts all through the strip of land called Bu Wizir, which is the most ancient part of the pre-dynastic culture here, the Cometians. And again, we're talking about vertical shafts, in many cases interacting with horizontal systems of tunnels carrying water, and not just water for irrigation, water to fuel these ancient power plants. So we're in the living bedrock now, or maybe not. These could actually be massive. Oh, this is megalithic rock? Okay, so this is the bedrock. The cracks that I thought were joints actually are fissures and cracks in the stone, but still. You see this, again, this is the Gíze Plateau. And anywhere you find a shaft or the tunnel entrance, of course you find a locked door. As Yusuf...
From the writings that exist here, we know that this part was transformed into a tomb.
Right. So the hieroglyphics are later, and this was converted into a tomb, but its original function was not that of a tomb. But quite possibly part of the water carrying system that was the, or for resonance.
Yes, especially the higher ones could be more for resonance than water. Then look, here's the shaft leading to two, one from up, and then if you stood up a little, you're going to see that there is a chamber down here. So there are chambers, shafts, tunnels, chambers, like that.
How many levels do you think there are?
Three.
3 levels
At least.
of tunnel systems. Sphinx again?
Here's another chamber.
Oh yeah.
We're going to go down with the left.
Wow, okay, so
From the outside, not from the inside.
okay. Again, another shaft behind a locked gate heading down. And in behind this gate, more.
This will lead to many rooms.
Uh-huh.
Shafts as well. Look, where is this all cut? We came through one and we came to the other.
Yeah.
And then this led to another, and the other led to deeper one with others.
Uh-huh.
Like that one. This is how the system looks like. But unless we really want to reveal the whole construction and not just look for tombs,
Yeah.
we need to make like start from an area and just keep mapping everything and put lights and markers to lead our way, because this is like a huge labyrinth.
Oh yeah. So what also we can see is the difference even in when they worked in smaller scale, the quality difference between Commission work, which is older than dynastic, and the dynastic work. This is Commission. You see the beautiful complex angles, very tight fitting joints, originally very smooth finish, and then what Yusuf points out as being dynastic construction. Cruder, rougher surface, mortar, and cartouches, and hieroglyphics added later. This would have been a tomb most likely. It's been torn apart. And that's where we see parallels between here and Peru, because, again, most archaeologists, most visitors to Peru think that everything was done by the Inca, that the megalithic work in super hard stone was done with primitive tools. All it took was a lot of people to do the work. But that's nonsensical, because we see the same kind of thing. We see the megalithic is older, far superior. The Inca work is complex, but not as good. Sorry?
No decorations, no writings, nothing.
Right.
Except a big chamber with one well to the left and another one to the right.
Uh-huh.
And the other one probably leads further to the rest of the construction.
Ah. Yeah. You can see, hopefully here, on that side, see there's an indent in the wall at the end, and then there is a tunnel underneath it. You see the little dark area, that's a tunnel entrance. And again, according to Yusuf, at least 3 levels of tunnels here at the Gíze complex, which, you know, the word complex is too simplistic for this area. It's completely monstrous in scale.
This one was about to be transformed. You find the writings, you find that they reshape something like a false door because it became something traditional after that. So they copied also.
Okay, right.
That's what makes it confusing.
Yeah. We're now going to enter into part of the cave system here on the Gíze plateau. And this gate was not locked, so we're walking in.
As we can see, there's a chamber up here.
Oh yeah.
That's leading to a room through the shaft.
Right.
And then the room here, and the shaft continues to other levels and other rooms.
Right.
That's how the design look like.
Uh-huh.
Enter from a room and this one, and then you'll probably find other channels going in different directions.
Right. Well, this also has the look of the subterranean chamber in that it looks unfinished, but in fact that may have been the way that the builders wanted it, because it wasn't for burying somebody. It had a practical use. You know, practical beyond burying someone. Part of the incredible water system fueling the pyramids, which, again, prior to the dynastic Egyptians were, as some believe, and brilliantly executed by Christopher Dunn in his book, The Gíze Power Plant, that these were ancient power plants that shut down almost 12,000 years ago. You can hear the amazing resonance quality as Yusuf is toning. And the clear pattern we can see about the pre-dynastic Commissions is that they were masters of the use of water and the use of sound or vibration. Again, chambers like this, quite possibly Commission in construction, were later adopted by the dynastic Egyptians as places to bury bodies. But the dynastic Egyptians didn't construct this room or carve this room out. They found it, left over from Cometian times. Oh yeah, yeah.
I said the ultimate machining we see in the Seraphim makes us positive that the underground complex is originally part of the bigger part with the pyramid. And not something that was like made later. We can go take a break here.
Okay.
You cannot even count how many shafts we have.
No, there are, I don't even know if there are hundreds of shafts, but there are so many of them. Hundreds at least, yeah. So this is this a calcite entrance?
No, this is limestone. It's actually it was written. You can still see some of that left here.
Ah, okay.
Between the right.
Ah, okay.
But we know that it originally was not made as a barrier.
Ah, okay.
You can see again. The well will lead you to a room.
Right.
And then the well will continue, not just deep, but also in other directions.
Right.
And we can get out of here, go to the other room that this one leads to.
Okay. So that's a key point, is that the hundreds of shafts that are here seem to lead down to horizontal tunnels underneath the Gíze plateau, as in like a massive network of tunnels, not a few caves off in the distance or a few caves here and there, but an incredible system of engineering into solid bedrock. Wow. Actually, sorry, Yusuf, the sound in it, the resonance in these chambers. Yeah.
So it's designed really well.
Oh, incredible. So as Yusuf pointed out, no one would go to all the difficulty of carving these bedrock shafts.
The tunnel is still running underneath the other level.
Oh.
The other chamber.
Okay. But they wouldn't have gone to all of this trouble and then left these sculptures unfinished. So you believe these are dynastic?
This is part of the transformation. This
Okay.
is how it was done.
Right.
That they would add this. None of the statues we're going to see in this chamber is high relief. They are all carved deeply like this.
Ah, yeah.
And then even the marks here in this wall is not matching with the marks here on that edge.
That's true. So different tools were at work.
Yes, and I can start to do 2 statues and stop at this point. But I'm not going to start at the whole tomb and finish all this work in the mound and stop here.
Right.
That's what I want to say. From someone who works on stones by hand.
Oh, yeah.
We know that the work in this chamber to make it empty like that
Right.
is much more challenging than carving 2 statues.
That's true. So what it seems to be...
Critical point, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what it seems to be evidence is of early construction, probably completed by the Cometian culture, and then later adopted by the dynastic Egyptians. This room was here, so they used it, and then they were at work making sculptures, and for some reason the work stopped. So you believe this would have been a dynastic tomb that was never completed?
No.
No?
It's an ancient part of the construction that was being transformed, and that transformation is not complete.
Ah, okay.
That's how I look at it.
Exactly, yeah. So the dynastic work was never completed. So again, we're on the Gíze Plateau, and we're probably at the second level of the shafts and tunnels. There's most likely one above us, at least one below us.
Here, this one here, all covered with trash and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But you can see that the shaft is not going only straight down, but it's also going to the left or to the west.
exactly.
And the thing, the impressive thing is that also the lines of water is also with the cardinal directions. It's not just running in any direction.
Oh yeah,
You don't find one is going like north east or something.
right.
They're going also like east, west, north, south. You know, with the direction.
So it's an obvious grid pattern that was set up.
This here is the design, the primitive design of how they developed the box down there.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. This is it. That's how they developed the box. So they made for it that road so they can slide it down.
Oh yeah.
This is how they transformed them into two. So this one here was transformed into two.
Uh-huh.
We can go look at it. You like to go look at this? But there is another one here
Okay.
that also I want to show you. So which one you want to see first? Both?
Both. So when you hear the term transformation that Yusuf is using, what he's meaning is that from the original constructors, Cometians, who lived thousands of years prior to the dynastic Egyptians, then the dynastic Egyptians show up and they reused the Cometian work, as in they transformed it to the function they wanted. What we're looking at is a system of tunnels and shafts and chambers, which could very well have had a water function in Cometian times. The dynastic Egyptian liked to use them for burying people. But the problem is, then you have a lot of academics who say they were all for burying people. And that's where the falsehood comes, that the Great Pyramids of Giza were burial places because you find a lot of burials in the area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that something as massive as the Great Pyramid, which was one of the greatest achievements in human history, that was done just because some arrogant king decided he wanted some big place to put his corpse. Oh, so here we are up the next level, looking down into a shaft. Another shaft that goes down. You can see a bit of light in there, but you can't, but I can. And then farther in.
This is also one of the chambers that were used. The barrier that we can see here.
Oh yeah.
The carvings and the blocks that
Right.
were added.
Oh, of course. Yeah. So as Yusuf points out, the door here was added later.
At least the carvings on it.
Yeah. Yeah, or at least the carving's done. Here's the carving, dynastic Egyptian carving. But the actual room itself, this could have been tomb raiding, who knows, but the actual room itself could be by the older culture, the Cometians.